Okay, hello and welcome to the first proper programming video tutorial for people-centered computing. So in this video tutorial we're going to show you how to do basically what we're wanting for the lab, which is going to be develop a simple sketch, if you like. So a little program that's going to allow you to draw in some kind of interesting way with the mouse. So we're not going to be able to unpack all the detail of how we do that. We'll do that over the coming weeks, but hopefully we'll be building something that's remotely fun and a little bit interesting. So the first thing we want to do is use a function called setup. So we go void setup, we have some regular brackets and then some curly brackets or parenthesis. In here we're going to tell it what size we want the screen to be using a command called size, and we're going to go for 400 by 400. Close the brackets and put a semicolon on the end of the line. The next function that we're going to write is a function called void draw, and what this function does, void draw, similar structure as the other one. We've got regular brackets and then these funny curly parentheses and brackets. Void setup is called once when the program runs, and it initializes your program. So if you want anything in your program to happen once, this is the place to put it. Draw is called every time that Java wants to refresh the screen. So every time that the operating system says, hey Java, update the screen, update your wee bit of the screen, what do you want to do? This is the function that's called. So this is called over and over and over again, and because of that we can get some kind of neat effects. So in the simplest case, we can just draw a point. We're going to draw this point where the cursor is. So we're going to use some nice built-in features of processing. We can grab the mouse X and the mouse Y coordinates just by using these keywords, mouse X and mouse Y, and this is just going to draw a point where the cursor is. So every time that this function is called, we'll get a point. So let's just have a wee look and see what that looks like. Okay, so over here you can see we're getting a single pixel change to black when I move the mouse around. If I move it slowly, we get something that's almost a solid line, but if I move it quite quick, this line begins to get scattered because the mouse is moving faster than the rate at which this draw function is being called up. So that's possibly interesting, but we'll see if we can extend this a little bit and close that. So if we want to get the effect of having a continuous line, which is more akin to what you'd maybe expect from a paint package, we need to do something a little bit more sophisticated, and we're going to use a command called line. Now this requires two pieces of information. Point, as the name suggests, just requires an XY position, a single point in a 2D space. Line requires 2 points, and the function is going to draw a line between them. So we want to draw a line from the previous, and we use a P to denote that, P mouse X, P mouse Y position, which is the last place the mouse was when this function was called, and to the current mouse X and the current mouse Y position, and a semicolon on the end. Just a wee note here, whenever we're putting anything inside a function we tend to put a couple of spaces just to make it read a little bit cleaner. So we'll now try this. We're going to expect, rather than just getting points when this function is called, we're going to get a line from the previous position to the current one, which should hopefully fill in those dots that we had. The gaps between the dots rather. Okay, so we get that. Now when we move around, if we move around slowly we can do nice curvy lines. If we move the mouse faster, we begin to see these edges. We can tell that this is just made up of straight lines. But that's maybe moving more towards what we would expect from a sketch thing. So now let's extend this a bit further. That's maybe a bit boring, we want to do something a little bit more creative, so we're going to move back to our single point. But rather than just drawing one point, we want to draw many points. We're going to use a thing called a for loop. And as I said in the introduction, we're not going to go into the details of what's going on here in any kind of depth. I less than. So I'm going to say I less than 30 for what we're doing just now, all we need to know is that this number here tells us how many times this loop is going to run, how many times the things inside these curly brackets are going to be executed. And we'll indent this as well, just so that we get this nice kind of pattern, makes our code a little easier to read. So when the screen comes to be refreshed, we're going to come into this for loop, and for 30 times we're going to draw a point where the mouse is. So this point will be the same, and that's not going to be very interesting. We'll just get the same pixel switched on 30 times. So to give a little bit of variation here, we're going to add something to this, an offset. We're going to add a random offset using a function called random. We're going to just add 5 pixels to the x and the y. Random 5. So this means if the mouse is here, +5 and +5, positive and negative, we're going to just have random points. So let's see what kind of effect this gives us. Okay, so that's given us a kind of spray can. If I move really fast, in fact we'll change that, we'll make a random value a bit bigger. We'll make this effect a bit more obvious. Let's try that. Okay, there we go. So we've got a kind of spray can effect. We can begin to make different pictures with different densities of blackness, which is fine. So this is one example of using a single input, the x and y point, and kind of playing with that and doing different things. So what I'd like to see you guys doing for this lab is work up to this example and then have a look at the documentation, have a think about what could you do around this x-y point. Could you draw different shapes? Could you increase the random? Could you introduce different relationships and things? And just have a bit of a play with that. Okay, I think that's all we've got to say for this particular video. Thank you for listening.